I'd ask Ms. Johnson for a roll call.
Councilmember Abdalgawad,
Here.
Councilmember Boehner,
Present.
Councilmember Burke,
Present.
Councilmember Holman,
Present.
Councilmember Hubach,
Present.
Councilmember Kellogg,
Present.
Councilmember Moorhead,
Present.
Councilmember Stevens,
Present.
Mayor Kirkhoff.
Mayor Kirkhoff is absent. Okay, we have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the next item, we have a presentation and award. Make sure I try to be heard here. All right. Whereas Chris Wolfenbarger joined the Missouri National Guard on December 28, 2006 at 38 years of age as a combat medic and was deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 and 10. And whereas on February 12, 2010, he was wounded by a suicide car bomb. He has received a Purple Heart, a Combat Medic Badge, and an Army Commendation Medal. He medically retired from service for combat wounds on October 23, 2013. And whereas in 2012, Mr. Wolfenbarger was instrumental in creating the Foundation for Exceptional Warriors, whose vision is to reach, recognize, and refresh exceptional warriors through the utilization of therapeutic, recreational, and sporting events. And whereas Mr. Wolfenbarger has excelled in his association with the Foundation for Exceptional Warriors, coordinating events, raising funds, and speaking on radio and TV shows to raise awareness on the mission of the Foundation for Exceptional Warriors. Because of his dedication, he was seated on the board of directors in 2014. Now therefore, I, Derek Moorhead, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Raymore, Missouri, do hereby proclaim March 9, 2015 as Chris Wolfenbarger Day. I also want to note to the audience that we do have, and I will not read this in its entirety, but the Missouri House of Representatives has given a resolution in honor as well.
If you speak into the microphone, they can hear you on the TV.
Outstanding. First of all, I am humbled and graciously accept this on behalf of all veterans that have served in Raymore and Belton area, and most of all on behalf of the families that sacrificed to make that service possible. They said I could say a few words, and I've never been one to be shy, so I'm going to. Absolutely none of this could have happened without my wife Leah Sword. And without my children Christian, Morgan, and Madison. I'd like to thank all the people in my family for never giving up on me and for supporting me in all the things that I've endeavored to do. I'd like to thank Mayor Kirkhoff and Mayor Pro Tem and Representative Bratton for recognizing the Pew's efforts and stepping forward to support veterans and veterans organizations. 22 veterans a day killed themselves. The Foundation for Exceptional Warriors is helping to break that downward spiral of isolation, depression, and despair by connecting these warriors with their families, with other veterans, and themselves through the use of outdoor recreational therapy. And quite frankly, it's working. If you're watching this on our website at home or if you've heard this proclamation and are moved to learn more about the Foundation for Exceptional Warriors, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us at our website, www.exceptionalwarriors.org. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And when you see us doing things that you approve of, please share it with the people that are in your community, because that's the way to get the word out. A lot of people say that no one person can change the world. And I absolutely disagree. I think only one person can change the world. And that person is you. And if you envision change in our world, then you need to step forward and do it. And I believe that we all can do that. So I challenge everyone to see a problem, envision a solution, and then step forward and do something about it. It really is that simple. So I would like to thank the City of Raymore for recognizing my efforts, the efforts of my family and my extended family, and the veterans community and Vets Post 181, most specifically in making this day happen. So thank you all very much for recognizing my service, but know that I'm just a regular Joe, and the real heroes are sitting in the front row, my family right there in the back row, my mom, dad, my sister. So thank you all very much.
Our next item on the agenda are personal appearances. We have one personal appearance, Don Peters with the Cass County Historical Society.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, thank you for letting me talk to you a little bit today, and let me say it's an honor to be able to follow that man. My name's Don Peters. I'm the Executive Director of the Cass County Historical Society. And just a little over a year ago, I came in front of the council here to ask permission to do a tribute to Veterans Parade in Raymore. It was a first-time effort. What we were doing is recreating a program that Raymore did back in the late 1890s. And the council was generous enough to allow us to do it. We had the parade, and I think by all those who saw, it was a rousing success. I come to you this evening to see if we can repeat that effort. We'd like to do is a memorial parade on Monday, the 25th. We would follow the same route as we did last year. That'll be from the Presbyterian Church, Maple, to Washington, to Elm, to the cemetery. And at the cemetery this year, while last year we recognized Civil War burials, this year we're going to recognize the World War I soldiers that are buried there. So I'm open to any questions, and if you have anything to ask me, I would love to have permission to repeat the parade. I like this. You guys are all right.
Well, I would take our silence as supportive, so
Excellent.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Before we enter staff reports, I'd ask Ms. Johnson to recognize that the mayor is in attendance.
Staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask that Mr. Steve Rulo make the report for the Parks and Recreation Department this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn, Mayor, Council. Basically, the main things I wanted to hit on this month is our youth volleyball and soccer programs. We'll be starting up the weekend of March 28th. The youth recreation baseball and softball registration will be open through the rest of this month, March, and competitive leagues closes in 2 weeks. The big things, upcoming calendar events. I wanted to let you all know that we are having a flag retirement event on Thursday, March 19th. It'll be over at the Moon Valley Park, down by the Parks Fire Pit. Starts at 6 p.m. Would love for any of you all that can attend to attend. March 21st in Recreation Park, we are having a Touch a Truck event. This will be our second annual Touch a Truck event. It was a very good event last year, and hopefully we have the same weather as we did last year. And then coming up April 4th will be our Easter Festival over at Memorial Park starting at 9 o'clock. I'll entertain any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Kellogg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report, Mr. Rulo. You said something about a flag retirement. Is there a central drop-off space or place for folks that may have flags that they want retired to be a part of that they could drop them off at?
We do over at the Parks Department. We have several flags from this building, Public Works, and the Orsham flag. I'm sure we'd be more than welcome to bag them up for one of these events. I think we're going to try to start having this an annual event, just so people have the opportunity to dispose of them.
I think that's a great idea, and I ask you that personally because I have two of them that I'd like to retire, but I have to assume that other people may
Sure.
have some of that also.
I would
so.
say you could probably get a hold of me down at the Parks Department, and I can help you out.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rulo. With Mr. Cataret's absence, I will be making an attempt here at the planning and zoning pipeline, as he used to call it. So this will just kind of be a reading. The March 17th, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission agenda includes an item to request to reclassify the zoning of 1.1 acres of undeveloped land on the west side of Monroe Street, south of Plum Street, from R1 OT Single Family Residential Original Town Overlay District to R3A OT Multifamily Residential Original Town Overlay District to allow for a 13-unit age-restricted senior housing development. I believe that's the only item that's scheduled for that agenda, new item scheduled for that agenda that evening. That would conclude the community development report. Just one item from myself, sir. The work session for next Monday, March 16th, has a single item on it. It is time for the joint meeting, the joint quarterly meeting with the Park Board here at the end of March. There are two items currently on the agenda. Report on the First Baptist Church property and the MOU. And I thought that in light of the fact that we're getting a new director of Parks and Recreation, and a lot of people seem to be very unfamiliar with changeover on both the Park Board and the City Council, that we would pass out the current memorandum of understanding that exists between the Council and the Park Board, and perhaps it would give both groups the opportunity over the course of the next quarter to take a look at that, see if they would like any tweaks to it, any changes to it, and then it would be the first item of the business then on the next quarterly joint meeting between the City Council and the Park Board. That would be the end of the open meeting schedule, and then there is an executive session scheduled for personnel reasons. That concludes staff reports, sir.
Thank you. Questions of staff?
Do we have anything coming up so that we'll be meeting on the 5th Monday in March or not? Have you planned that far ahead? Just curious.
There is always reason that I could schedule the council. I have a lot of items on work session agendas these days. I would leave that up to the council. Perhaps next week I could report out on if there were any items of very pressing calendar nature coming up, and I could think of a couple of those even as I'm sitting here. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Go on to committee reports, and there are no committee reports, I take it. And then I entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda to include items A, City Council minutes, February 23rd, 2015.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Move on to unfinished business. We may have a reading of Bill 3042 by title only.
Second reading of Bill 3042 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving and authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Geyer Fence Company and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders up to the budget amount.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3042, award of contract for the Recreation Park Ball Fields renovation project.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3042. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke out against this project at our first reading, and I had what I thought were pretty good valid reasons at the time. I think pretty much most of the staff sitting in the room can tell you that I grabbed 2 shovels and dug into this even deeper after that, and I basically changed my position. I generally pride myself on consistency. I found out a number of reasons why I think that this probably is the best spend that they could make at this time. One is staff's assessment, I think Mr. Rulo's in particular, that those fences are going to need to be replaced within about 5 years if not done right away, and which would kind of hinder us, I think, from a standpoint of an immediate capital expense of $300,000 or more. And so this is spread out. It makes more sense if it's shot down tonight. It goes back into the fund, and then it's a little bit difficult for it to come out. It's not to say that it couldn't. I also found out that it doesn't affect any of our other visioning projects that we want to fund negatively or positively. I had said all along that I thought it was a good project. I just didn't think it was the best bang for the buck. After receiving this information, I think it probably is at this time. I shared a story with Mr. Fierborn. I'd like to share with everybody else. The chief may have heard this. Chief Zimmerman may have heard this. When I was in the academy in 1990 at the Kansas City, Missouri Police Academy, they told us a story from the Hyatt T disaster. Those of you that are not familiar with that, the Hyatt downtown had a suspended second story, if you will, and they held tea dances, I think, on the weekends, and there was a disaster. It's been 25, 30 years ago, Chief. Basically, the floor collapsed. Several people died. Several people injured. Still a lot of people, I think they're still trying to build a memorial for that. The story they told us at the academy was that when the call went out, the first 3 responders on the scene were district officers for Kansas City, Missouri PD, who did exactly what all cops would do. They did as they were trained. They parked as close as they could. They got inside, and they started helping people. The 4th emergency responder on the scene was a sector sergeant whose first action was to call for a tow truck to have those 3 police cars removed because his people were inside helping people, and they had their keys with them to their car, and there was no other ingress or egress into the building that they had just blocked. They did exactly what they were supposed to do with the information they were equipped with at the time, but when you looked at it from a standpoint later on, it wasn't the best thing to do. I kind of felt like the guy that was coming out and the chief being my sergeant telling me why my car had been towed. So I'll be supporting this tonight.
Any other comments? Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the second reading of I'll get there. Just a second. There we go. Second reading of Bill 3049, please.
Second reading of Bill 3049 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Phoenix Concrete and Underground LLC for the 2015 Sidewalk Gap Program. City project number 15209-201 in the amount of $128,379.58, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders with an established budget constraints.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3049, award of contract for the Sidewalk Gap project.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3049. Any discussion? All in favor? Bill passes unanimously. Thank you. We have the second reading of Bill 3050, please.
Second reading of Bill 3050 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2015 capital budget.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3050, budget amendment for the Sidewalk Gap project.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3050. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. May we have the second reading by title only of Bill 3051, please?
Second reading of Bill 3051 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with KC Master Companies for the City Hall Tower Stabilization Project, City Project Number 1511201, in the amount of $37,990, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3051, award of contract for the City Hall Tower stabilization.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3051. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. May we have the second reading of Bill 3052 by title only?
Second reading of Bill 3052 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2015 capital budget.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3052, budget amendment for the Johnson Drive water main replacement.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3052. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. I think that takes care of old business. Yep. All right. First item of new business, where is a public hearing? So open the public hearing by asking for the first reading.
This particular item does not have a reading, sir.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing by asking for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. According to section 605010 of the Raymore City Code, quote, "No person shall engage in any of the business, trades, occupations, service occupations set forth in section 605020 of this chapter within the city without first having obtained a license thereof from the city clerk in compliance with the requirements of this chapter and paying the applicable license tax fee. This business, Dairy Queen, has failed to obtain an occupational license for the license years 2013, 2014, and 2015. Staff brings forth this item for council determination to seek injunctive relief on the continued operation of this business as outlined in Raymore City Code section 605040D attached. And I should point out that the owner for the Dairy Queen, Mr. Heinrichs, and his attorney, Mr. Frederickson, are both in attendance tonight,
Okay.
and I believe would like to make a presentation to the council.
Is there any questions of staff?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name's Scott Frederick. I'm an attorney here in Raymore. My office is right across the street here. Most of you know where it's at, but you can go out the window and see it if you like. With me here tonight is Mr. Corny Heinrichs. Let me step around here, Corny. You can see he is the owner and operator of the Dairy Queen right down the street here on 58 Highway. He's also a resident here in the city of Raymore and owns property in Raymore. He's had the Dairy Queen about 18 years, is that right? I think he opened up 18 years. He's operated here pretty successfully. To my knowledge, he's always paid all of his taxes. He's paid all of his real estate taxes, his personal property taxes, sales taxes in Cass County and in Raymore as long as he's lived here. By profession, he is also a dentist, although his practice is not here. He is a licensed practicing dentist. There's unusual circumstances here that has caused him to not be able to get the license. Obviously, it's not money. It's not a situation where he doesn't want to come down and pay the fee. He has made application for the license, but have been denied. In a nutshell, he does not have in his possession today a no sales tax due letter that it would be required before the license could be issued. The only reason he doesn't have a no tax due letter has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do, with the Raymore business, the Raymore location, or any taxes that would be due with regard to the Raymore facility, with regard to the Raymore Dairy Queen. It 100% had to do with a previous business that he owned in Harrisonville, another Dairy Queen. And I know by looking at a couple of your faces that you guys have dealt with the Department of Revenue before, and I'm not here to mess with them. But on the other hand, I've dealt with the Department of Revenue for about 35 years, and they're difficult to deal with. They're difficult to negotiate with, and what we're asking tonight for, quite frankly, is just an extension of time. We are in negotiations with the Department of Revenue to try to get that issue resolved, and we feel like we're close to having this resolved. And I think if we could have about 30-day extension on this, I believe that the issue with the license will be resolved. And that's all we're asking for here tonight, is for a 30-day extension in order to get that resolved.
Councilmember Kellogg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the appearance and showing and standing before us to explain that there are circumstances. Would there be any need, just remotely, because we are aware that wheels don't really, the gear cogs at state revenue does not turn real quickly, and it's not a really well-greased machine there right now with budget constraints and that. You've asked for 30 days. And I'm not trying to give you more or anything like that, but I would rather you consider that rather than come back in another 30 days and go through the expense of having your lawyer show up again and that. I believe we have in the past granted up to 60 days. And I'm going to ask you quite frankly and honestly, do you feel that 30 days is sufficient, or would 60 be more reasonable?
Anytime you ask me for more time, you know I'm going to take it. So yeah, that's fine. I mean, yeah, we don't have any problem with the 60 days. It's just that at the present time, we would contemplate that the matter should get resolved in 30 days. But like you said, there's always things that occur that's beyond Mr. Heinrich's control, and so it could be 33 days or 37 days, obviously. So when I say 30 days, that was just a number that I thought was reasonable. And of course, we're trying to be reasonable here, and we don't want to make it look like that he's intentionally not obtaining his license. He's, like I said, he's been involved in this community too for a long time, and he's donated a lot of ice cream, I know, because I've eaten some of it, to, you know, like festivals and things that go on Raymore. He's donated to charities and donated over this. So it's not a situation where he's trying to avoid coming in here and pay the relatively nominal fee to obtain a license. That's not what this is about. It's related to the Director of Revenue. Mr. Moorhead, I'm sure, is well aware that when you're dealing with the Director of Revenue, when you have an issue like that, it's just difficult to get resolved. It's not as simply, it's not like just going down there and talking to him. It just doesn't work that way. And so I think we will get it resolved, don't you think, Corey? But he's saying if we could have the 60 days, that's fine, and that way we would be, I think you're pretty well assured the 60 days. He's saying 60 days would be and that'd be fine, so that way we wouldn't have to come back here in 30 days, like you say, and ask for an additional extension. I think that's probably correct. Alderman Kellogg, I would agree with that. In case it does come to be like 37 days or something, you know how it goes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Did you have any questions of Mr. Hanks? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we continue the public hearing on the delinquent occupational license. I'm going to propose for the second public meeting in April. Second public meeting in April, which is about 45 days.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to continue to the second meeting in April.
As a comment on the reason for the kind of splitting the difference, if we moved it only 30 days, we would be falling on the meeting that we have a lot of ongoing business anyway, because that's the election night results, so it's a very active meeting. In addition, I think we've kind of started to establish a precedent that we would like to see the owners kind of coming in and kind of keeping us up to date. We have also set a little bit of a precedent that if we did run a couple days glaze over, that we're not afraid to grant that additional time. So I don't, there's no intent here to extend any discourtesy to the applicant, only that it kind of keeps this moving forward a little bit. And so I believe we do have a second meeting in April.
That's correct, sir. Date certain would be April 27th.
April 27th, okay. This time I'll open the floor for public comment. Please identify yourself for the record and keep your comments down to 5 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second to continue until April 27th. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the reading of Resolution 1516.
Reading of Resolution 1516 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving the extension of the expiration date of the preliminary plat for North Cass Plaza subdivision located in Section 19, 20, 29, and 30, Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Cass County, Raymore, Missouri.
Staff report.
Thank you, sir. With an approved preliminary plat in effect, this property is currently exempt from the stream buffer protection requirements. The preliminary plat was initially approved on March 24th, 2014, and is valid for a 1-year time frame. The applicant has advised city staff he is currently having plat and engineering documents prepared in order to file a final plat on this property. No final plat application has been filed to date. There are streams identified within this proposed subdivision. However, it is important to note that an approved preliminary plat is not a guarantee that the approved final plat for the area will be an exact match to the preliminary plat, similar to the one you were reviewing last month on the same sort of an issue. When you look at the particular plat map for this, there are properties that will have to be moved accordingly once we get to final plat. On October 14th, 2014, a master development agreement between Good Otis and the City of Raymore was approved that set forth the rights, duties, obligations of the property owner regarding future development of this particular property. At this time, staff would recommend approval of a 1-year extension. If this recommendation is followed, the new expiration date of the preliminary plat would be March 24th, 2016, and Mr. Jim and Dave Otis are in attendance this evening if you would like to hear a presentation from them as well. That concludes staff reports.
Questions of staff? Would you like to come forward?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I appreciate the opportunity to be here before you tonight and to ask for this extension. We believe this is a very important project for the City of Raymore as far as the future of retail and sales tax and the development of the Good Ranch. One of the main reasons why we have not filed for a plat yet is because we're waiting for the Missouri Department of Transportation to award us, hopefully, a full access intersection at North Cass Parkway and what would be Fox Ridge Drive, which is something that is absolutely necessary because we've been running into a head wall with retailers that have expressed interest for that site and have been watching that site. They come down here and they visit the site and they say, well, absolutely not if there's not full access. We will not accept a 3/4 access. So we're waiting for MoDOT to decide on that. And once that happens, and hopefully that will happen, then we can be able to carry on and go forward. And we will immediately file for the final plat. We've got all of our proposals in for the final plat, civil and engineering drawings, and so we will be before you again.
Questions
Thank
of the applicant? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Resolution 1516.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 15-16 preliminary plat extension for a 1-year extension for the North Cass Plaza.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve Resolution 1516. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the first reading of Bill 3048 by title only.
First reading of Bill 3048 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Athco LLC for the Farmers Market Shelter Project, City Project Number 15206-202, in the amount of $149,306, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Mr. Krass.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what you have before you this evening is a second phase of the farmers market improvements that are scheduled for this year. If council will recall, the recent meeting, you approved the site work and a concrete slab. This project involves the construction of a shelter over that concrete slab, whereas we have started to refer to it as the depot for the farmers market area. This, to kind of remind council, this project is really an outgrowth of the original town plan that was done several years ago. That the neighborhood came together through a number of charrettes, identified a number of improvements that they wanted to see. We've installed sidewalks, the decorative lighting projects that we've done down in that area, and they also the neighborhood wanted a creation of a gathering space. And so this project is really an outgrowth of that plan and a key component of that. I've been working closely with the recommended contractor, Athco, to incorporate some of the architectural features that we had envisioned for the project. I am very pleased with the work and the concept that they've developed and recommend award of the contract to them.
Questions of staff?
This is great work, Mr. Krass. Assuming approval of the project, when would you expect those improvements to be done? Late this spring. I have not had a conversation with the manufacturer yet as far as mill times and fabrication times, but we anticipate the site work will be done fairly, depending on weather, fairly close to the opening of the farmers market, with the shelter to follow shortly thereafter. You read my mind, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3048.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3048 for the Farmers Market Shelter Project.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3048. Is there any discussion? Councilmember?
I have some concerns about the total cost of this. I know it's a popular project, but with the last meeting that we had, we went, it was supposed to be $150,000, and we had a $50,000 increase. So that put the total cost of the concrete and all up to $200,000, and now we're going to have $150 more on this. I wanted to know, do you have any idea about what the total cost of this project is going to be? And is there any way that we can cut some of these costs? Because we do have other parks. We're trying to get some neighborhood parks. We only have so much money to go around. And so I am concerned that might end up spending too much money on one park at the expense of some of the others for the community. So can you tell me anything at all about the total cost?
The previous one, where you're speaking about the 50,000 additional, a significant component of what was actually about 40,000 additional on top of the 50 is for contingency that may or may not be spent. The site work is pretty simple. We're actually hoping what was the original base bid on that one, Mike? Can you remember?
No, sir, I apologize. No, sir, I apologize. I don't have that in front of me.
I want to say that it was in the 15 to 18 range over the 150 to get to the baseline that was on there. So that one would actually be 15 to 18,000 over. This one is just slightly under. Apparently, I have the authority to spend about $700 to get the budget on this particular one if there's any change orders. But because this is a pre-manufactured building, we do not anticipate that. I would also remind the council that as far as other parks projects, which certainly I know the Parks Board Their CIP committee is meeting now. They have a lot of ideas that are coming before them. But the particular funding for this project actually came from a transfer from the Capital Improvement Fund. So they're spending Capital Improvement Fund money on this project, not park money.
Other comments? There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3048. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. May we have the reading of Resolution 1515, please?
Reading of Resolution 1515 by title only, a resolution of the Raymore City Council adopting a multi-year curb replacement program.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Mr. Krass.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In 2013, the City Council approved a multi-year curb replacement program. We've outlined that program in our council memorandum. This is the we are entering the third year of this program. This year's work will take place in the Fox Haven and Eagle Glen, Lakeshore, and Eagle Glen and Lakeshore subdivisions. Want to point out to everyone that this year the council, as part of this fiscal year, the council improved funding or increased funding by approximately 60%, which took our budget up from $300,000 to $500,000, which is going to increase the amount of curb that we can replace from approximately $12,000 to $20,000. And at this time, we are asking for approval of the resolution, which will set forth the program for this year, so we can begin final preparation of bidding documents.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Krass, I've taken a couple questions from constituents in the Meadows, and I do see the Meadows listed in the second table of the chart under 10-year program on, let me see what page this is, page 218 of 311 in the e-packet. Can you explain to me what program year number 2 designation is, and then also the zone designation? Because at the top of the list, I see where the program year is 1, and then the zones are 3 and 2, and then the second table is 2 and 1, respectively. Can you explain that to me? And then my question is that with the 20,000 linear feet that I think you just said, can you clarify that the Meadows, the 900 linear feet in the Meadows is included in that?
No, sir, it is not. That was identified as the 2014 program. We are moving forward into the 2015 program. So that the work in the Meadows and such that you are seeing in program year 2 and in zone 2 and zone 1 was part of last year's project. So there was work done in the Meadows and in the Meadowwood area. And, there was in fact an amendment to the program to do additional work in that area. So what we have identified is a 10-year program, and we've identified the severity of the deteriorations, and the maps show the zones that we are going to be working in, and it is also all laid out on our website. So this year we are going to be working in Zone 2, which is basically the areas between south of 58 Highway and south of 58 Highway, west of Sunset, and north of Lucy Webb Road.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I have another question about Meadowwood and Meadows. They still have quite a bit of curb over there that's really terrible. We were able to do 900 feet, but it wasn't nearly enough. Is there no reason to revisit that this year?
Thank you, sir. One of the items that staff would point out to the council on this, if you look back to 2013 and 2014, you note that there's approximately 300,000. One of the items, to start with, one of the items that staff fully acknowledges is there's a lot of curb out there that needs to be replaced. And it's not just in one subdivision, it's in every subdivision. And I think that's one of the reasons the council saw the wisdom of coming up with a multi-year program that spread the work around so that at least we were trying to get to certain locations and get things done in them. One of the items that the council did approve, you'll note in 2013 and 2014 that there was approximately $300,000 worth of work done in each of those years. For this year and in future years, staff has upped that dollar amount by paying for part of this out of the stormwater sales tax because it is a water conveyance measure, and we've also increased the amount of the transportation fund using this by $100,000. So you'll note that in 2015, for the first time, we're spending about $500,000 on curb. The goal with that is to be able to, like in the Meadows last year, if we see additional problems, first pass is if there are additional issues that need to be addressed in the neighborhoods that are listed, we will first put the money to those. If the curb has deteriorated even further to where they rise up to the ranking level. If we get through that then for the baseline, then we would be moving on to the next year for addressing the top needs that are in there. In this case, of course, we would be going into Madison Creek, Gore Estates, and Madison Valley accordingly. But staff definitely acknowledges that there's a lot of curb out there and not as much resources we would like to be able to get to some of those. To the degree that we can go in and be using staff resources to do patching until we can get back to the areas that have significantly deteriorated, we're also devoting resources to that as well.
Councilmember Kellogg, followed by Moorhead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the explanation. The reason why I asked this is the pictures that were shown in the e-packet of the rating 1, 2, and 3 and such, it speaks to the conversation I've had with my constituents. I note that the date on the pictures are 5/7 of 12, so they're almost 3 years old. And that's the only point that I want to drive home and make staff aware of is that, you know, I'm looking at pictures here that are 3 years old, and I have to assume that they've deteriorated even more. And I would ask that, and I know you have, but I'm going to ask that you direct staff to go back and, you know, review, you know, and I know you do, but I've got to ask that staff be diligent about this, and that if they do deteriorate, to please come back and, you know, give us some kind of an update, whether it's in our one-on-one meetings or here in the public hearing or an email. That's what I'd appreciate. Thank you.
Moorhead.
Mr. Fearborn, during our budget discussions last summer, I know that we were talking about how to fund this, and I know there was some we specifically focused on Meadowood and the Meadows, and correct me if I'm wrong, because my memory serves me that there was some discussion that maybe those areas did not get complete in the previous year, and it was my understanding that we wouldn't walk away from a project midstream just to stay to the chart, that Meadowood and the Meadows would get completed before we would move on to the next item. So am I completely off base there?
I believe we completed all the work that was identified and to be done last year. As Mr. Kellogg pointed out, the curb continues to deteriorate, and it deteriorates at an accelerated level. You know, it's what we have is a systematic plan. Yes, we will go back and review the plan based on and update the plan based on the current funding levels and the current program, but I think that's a discussion we'll have to have sometime is, you know, there's other needs, as Jim pointed out, across the city. So how long do you spend in one neighborhood without addressing needs elsewhere?
Councilmember Stevens?
My understanding was we did 900 linear feet last year. We knew that it wasn't going to be everything that was required. So I guess I would have the same question as as Derek would have, why we're not finishing, especially in such a small area.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yeah,
have
please,
a
go
minute,
ahead.
please. We, if you recall, part of the Meadows was accelerated. There was a budget amendment. And the next, according to the adopted plan, the next time we would be in the Meadows areas would be in 2017. At that time, we have identified, and it will probably increase, an additional 2,000 feet of curb we estimate would need to be replaced. But that, again, we surveyed all the curb in the area, made some estimations of condition and deterioration, and that's the way the program balanced out. Now that, as I said, is based on the budget of $300,000. Staff wanted to get moving forward with this year's program, and then we would go back over the next year and update the plan and bring forward a new plan as part of the capital improvement process.
Any other questions?
And those 2017, some of those 2017 projects, if we stay according to this same plan and this same time frame, which was based on, and again, every 2 years, it's our intent to go back in and review to see if some has deteriorated. Now, of course, they're all deteriorating together, so they may stay in the same order, but amounts may increase. But if we can, obviously, and we get through all the curb in the areas identified, we would then be accelerating those 2017 projects, and we have certainly heard the Meadows identified many, many times. So that would obviously probably run up to the top of that 2017 list and could possibly be pushed into next year's program.
Any other?
And just to clarify, with the neighborhood being on the list, that's not saying that we're going to replace every bit of curb in that neighborhood. We're just identifying the portions of curb that need replaced. The city's also going through the neighborhoods and patching curbs as they see necessary. But I think it is important to consider that there are other neighborhoods in the city that we need to spend some money on too. I know over and over I hear Ward Park Place complaining about their curbs, and they're not near the top of this list. So we kind of all have to be patient and wait for our turn, and it will come.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 15-15. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Here we have a reading of Resolution 15-17 by title only.
Reading of Resolution 1517 by title only, a resolution of the Raymore City Council approving a design concept for the Dean Avenue, Lucy Webb Road roundabout feature.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. I will be calling on Mr. Krass to kind of explain and walk the council through just very briefly the mechanics of how this lays on the agenda, because there are obviously two action items within this letter item. And following that, I believe it's Mr. Krass's intent to turn it over to the Roundabout Feature Committee for their presentations.
Okay. Mr. Krass?
Thank you. This matter is being brought forward by staff on behalf of the Roundabout Feature Committee. And we've laid out three specific actions that the council would take. The first being adoption of Resolution 1517, which would approve the design concept that's being brought forward. A second item would be a request for a motion to authorize the city manager to sign a contract amendment with the design engineer or design architecture firm. And then the third item would be adoption of Bill 3055, which is a budget amendment to provide funding for Phase 1 or Concept A of the roundabout feature. With that, I will turn it over to the Roundabout Committee.
Want me to go first?
Go ahead.
All right. As you all know, we've been working on this for quite some time. This project obviously started with the development of the roundabout. And then we moved in with the committee and worked on design. We worked together as a committee for many months, trying about 14 months altogether, but originally trying to put our brains together, figure out what it was we wanted there. As a council, before we even established the committee, we decided that we didn't want just some kind of headstone-looking monument with a little bit of landscaping there. We decided as a council at that point that we wanted something striking. We wanted something that would draw attention into Raymore, something that would welcome people into Raymore on Lucy Webb, one of the main roads that our citizens travel. So together we started working as a committee on figuring out what features we wanted there. We came up with a design that we worked on as a committee, working with a teacher from the high school, hoping to incorporate some art from students at the high school into the feature. We really wanted to make it a community project, something that our community would be proud of, something, again, that would welcome people into the city of Raymore. We talked about having light features there. We talked about having water there. We talked a lot about having art there. And, you know, along the same time, we were talking about starting the Arts Commission and really starting a movement to bring art into town. At the same time, working on the farmers market area and wanting to bring out some of Raymore's history. So kind of tying a lot of these things together, the committee came up with a plan, a design that we created on our own, presented it to the council. Everybody seemed to think it was looking good, but of course we don't have the expertise to come up with dollar amounts or a specific design for that. So that's when we asked for some professional help to come in. They came in and we talked again through all of those different things that we had thought through. We wanted the art, we wanted the history, we wanted something Raymore could be proud of. We want something that people will see from the highway, because since our exits are kind of removed from the highway, we wanted something to draw attention our way and kind of give us a name and be a starting point for maybe some sort of art or some sort of theme that can be carried out through town. So with help from the professionals, we got a few designs. We examined those designs. We brought those back to the council and discussed them with everybody. Then kind of back to the drawing board with our budget amount, which was quite small. We figured out a starting place and then moved on with the company to figure out maybe what this could grow into, to incorporate the art from the students, to bring in the community, to have some art maybe from local artists, to possibly incorporate the Arts Council. I know that we've had mention of maybe some grants that could help us with the second phase of this. But I don't know about you guys, I hear quite a bit from people, when is there gonna be something there? It's been there so long, what are you guys gonna put there? So I feel like this plan that we have presented tonight to do the roundabout feature in 2 phases, beginning with a brick column in the middle, and the column is striped. The idea with the kind of the lines across it is to somewhat represent that railroad, bringing the railroad. That's what Raymore started around, was the railroad. And just to start with that basic center column that can have lights in it, can hold a planter on top to start with right now, because we don't have a whole lot of money to spend on it. And in the meantime, we're looking at maybe a capital improvement project to bring in the rest of the art part of the roundabout feature, or again, like I said, possibly working with the Arts Commission, some sort of grant to bring art into town. But this is kind of a presentation of both the starting point and our high hopes for the future.
Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Sonia, for the report. Very well done. What I would add on to it is and I'm not ringing my own bell. I'm reporting back onto what we went through in that, and I appreciate all your work. I appreciate all former Councilman Ryan Westcoast's work on this. There were some heated discussions back there, and I'll be the first to admit it. But we went through this with a goal in mind and the spirit of getting something done, and there is a lot of spirit of compromise here. Our vision was, you know, we started out with the sky's the limit, and I think that shows, you know, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm pretty darn proud of this. But in the end, we came back down to not my census, but the consensus that the willingness to spend that kind of money probably wasn't there. So we come to a collective mindset that we would try to do this in steps, and that's what we're trying to do. Sonia did speak of, you know, the stripes and the columns and that as representative of, you know, our history in that railroad is part of it, and that is represented there. There are also some elements of this that have been removed and compromised that could be added in the future to actually replicate more of the railroad if we chose to. It has to do with aesthetics of pavement and stuff like that, but there was a lot of compromise here, and I cannot stress that enough, and the spirit of compromise was huge, you know, and working together was, I don't want to say amazing, but it was very nice to work at that level. And I think what we have here is a very, and I'm going to be slighted. I think we have a very good project to present, and I think it's worthy myself, and I'm excited to have this go forward. So with that, I'll
Okay, questions from the council?
I have one, I guess, maybe for staff. Mr. Krass mentioned that we actually have 2 or 3 separate action items by the council on this, or is it all one vote?
The first item would be to approve the concept plan, that the concept A plan that is being brought forward, and that's the resolution before you at this time. Following that, if there is approval of the concept plan, would be to approve the budget amendment, Mike?
Authorizing
Authorizing the contract, and then authorizing a budget amendment associated with that contract, which would represent $28,632 in construction and $5,900 for this phase 1 to the architect engineering firm.
And part of this has been budgeted for, but it goes over by how much?
The remaining budget from the original budget is $23,903.73. Would require a budget amendment of $10,628.27 for a total of $34,532, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments, questions? Go ahead.
This roundabout was not a very popular project for the citizens of Raymore. We had more complaints against it than we did about anything else. And I'm having a hard time. I know that we want to do something nice, but this has been almost like a bottomless pit. We could have had a traffic signal for $250,000, and we've spent over $500,000 just on the roundabout, and we're not through yet trying to do some of the things. And when I looked at the plan, as a gardener, I can tell you that there are places in here where it would be not safe for the park department to be working, trying to clean up around it, because this is an area where you've got semis going around it, you've got a lot of traffic there, and I think that this is one of those places where less is more. And I think it's too fussy. We need to make it simpler. I'm hard pressed to vote for it, but at the same time, we need to get it completed. But next time, before we do another one, let's make sure that we know exactly how much it's going to cost us before we start spending the money. I've always said the best thing Raymore has going for it is the people of Raymore who are willing to foot the bill, but sometimes they don't need to foot this bill.
Mr. Moorhead?
Point of clarification on, in reading the resolution itself, the concept design, based on what I'm seeing in the packet, is that we're approving both phases, not individual phases, but both combined. Is that correct?
You're approving both concepts, but I would not say that you're approving both phases at this time. The phase would actually be the action item of building it. The resolution itself is simply approving concept A and the design contract associated with it.
Sonia?
And if I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but a lot of the underground work for phase 2 will be done in phase 1. In phase 2, we hope to have some really fascinating, fantastic art on top of this pedestal we're building. And so we have to build the pedestal so that it can withstand the weight of something more than the planter that's going to be on it initially. So a little bit of the beginning is setting up for phase 2, and not that phase 2 has to be exactly what we have in this plan right now. We would love for it to be, but you know, you have to have some of that groundwork to be able to look ahead, and it would not make sense for us to build simply the pedestal right now unless that's what we plan to leave there forever.
Any other comments?
I love the concept. I mean, I saw the presentation you all did. I like concept design B. It's expensive. It's just too expensive for my taste. I mean, I realize what you're trying to do, and given what you just said, if we don't intend to spend the kind of money on the second phase, I think you stated that we probably didn't need to do this one. So I don't know, I'm a little confused on this. I think we need to put something in there. Well, I'm sorry, please, if I'm wrong, please clarify. But I love the concept. It's beautiful. I don't think anybody can question that. And the work that you all did on it is amazing too. I'm just kind of staggered by the dollars in this. I believe the original budget amount for this was $25,000. Is that correct, Mr. Freeborn?
Well, we've always rounded it to the 25, but it's 23,903.73.
And we're going to go over by 10% on that, and then the second phase is staggering. I like it. I'm just the dollar. This is like taking me out to buy cars, and I'm going, I can't afford this one.
Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One point that I want to clarify is that there was never a dollar amount set aside for any part of this. The dollar amount where it came from was the monies that was left over from the $600,000 that it cost us to build the roundabout in the first place. So that was money that went back to the budget at that point, and like Jim says, it was rounded up to $25,000, so we had a talking point, something that's easy to remember. So I guess, and in all due respect, without trying to be disrespectful or anything, but here's my honest opinion. Had this been in the original concept or design of the roundabout, had this been included, I'm absolutely confident that this would have sailed through. It would have been sold as a safety feature of the roundabout. I can even tell you exactly how that argument would have went out, is that the whole thing about a roundabout is that you don't look through it, you look to the left. This would have been the obstruction in front of it that added to the safety feature. And I may sound crass, I may sound brash and all that, but that's me being honest. Nobody, well, I'm not going to say nobody. There was about two of us I know that absolutely fumed about the roundabout because the cost just kept going up and up and up. And I'm one of them. And I still am resentful that it's there. but it's there, it's not going anywhere. And my whole point was with the Roundabout Commission, and probably to Sonia and Ryan's surprise, was that I was so enthusiastic about this and on board and as helpful and trying in the spirit of getting something done, that, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that don't like that roundabout. I'll say a lot of my colleagues didn't care to listen to that. You know, when I asked for them to talk about it, they wasn't allowed to talk about it. And my whole spirit and my whole point is that we make this something more than an albatross that the neighbors did not want. And that's the spirit of the Roundabout Committee, I think, you know. Yeah, I do know it's expensive, but, you know, I've heard people talk, you know, well, we want to stand out. We want to stand out. You know, I just got an email here just the last week and a half. We all got it. You know, how one of my colleagues wants to light up City Hall. Guess where that first started talking about? Lighting this up with decorative lighting, you know. The whole point about the lighting was, you know, twofold. To light up the feature that we're willing to spend the money on. So it's decorative, so it's unique, and so it grabs the attention. The other thing is so that for the safety aspect during the night driving and the longer nights, because that roundabout is very dark. And if anybody don't believe me, I got 2 constituents sitting in the room right now that can attest to it. I've heard from them many times, you know, and I'm putting them off, you know, about putting lights in there because we want to see where this is coming from. You know, it is a dark area down there. You know, so this isn't just something, you know, that we wanted to go out and buy a Christmas present and install it. Yes, we had the spirit of that we were going to follow through with a lot of the talk that we heard, that, you know, we want that to look good down there. Well, now's the time to do it, you know, and I'm sorry for sounding so brash, but it you know, either we pony up or we don't, you know, and I'm not going to apologize for opposing the roundabout. I did, but I'm trying to make it as nice for our city, for our visitors, and for our neighbors down in that area. Thank you.
So, in my day job as an architect, one of the things that I've designed over the years, I've designed penal institutions, and they work great. I appreciate the fact that the staff has placed the juxtaposition of the curb replacement program directly before this particular project. It brings into clear view the 2 things that as a city council and as leaders in the city we really do have to pay attention to. Things do have to work. It has to be a nice place to stay. Prison cells work really great, but you're not going to want to stay there long. And in this particular case, we're looking at an amenity to the city that makes the quality of life better. I received contact from constituents who disagree with that, who would rather see it just work great. But for me and for the way that I'm looking at this, we're solving, we're being true to the values, the 2 important values that it takes to build and develop a city.
Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd have to side with Ms. Hubach on this. We've had a great deal of criticism about the roundabout to start with the cost. And just adding this, I can't ask taxpayers to do it. And I think I'd especially, it's for the special feature we have on top of it. I mean, $50,000 is a lot of money for that. I can't really support this.
Mr. Moorhead.
Mr. Mayor, as a point of order, we don't have a motion or a second on the table this is normally time designated for questions of staff and not the comments of council. I'm not criticizing anyone, but I think it would be most appropriate if we had a motion and a second, so then this would be a more appropriate time to discuss.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Resolution 1517.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 1517, the roundabout. I'm sorry, I don't have it right here, so I'm not.
Design concept. for
The
Dean
design
Andrews,
concept,
Lucy Red Roundabout.
Resolution 1517.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any comment? Councilmember Moorhead?
Okay. As far as my earlier question, or my actual question, for me, I as a person who's done construction, I kind of knew the answer, but apparently my implication was lost. Phase one is one of the concepts here, but the motion actually requires us, by implication, to draw in phase two as a part of that. I think the biggest concern I've heard across the board is cost, but yet the first phase, which would have to be done regardless, is within our budget issue as it is. I think we would almost forego some of the debate and concern here regarding this jump into the second phase if we would just approve phase one only, take that first step, get that put in there. We would have a roundabout feature. I know some who would oppose this would probably be happy with just phase one, and then we could kind of tackle phase two beyond that. So for me, again, I was supportive of this group getting together. I've loved the concepts. I respect the time and effort put into it, so I'm not opposing the group. I just almost wonder if we ought to take this incrementally. So I would be more inclined to support just, I will make a motion to amend Resolution 15-17 to only include phase one.
Second.
A second?
Wait a minute.
Motion and a second to include just phase one, design element A.
Yes.
Is there any questions, Councilmember?
I can support that, especially since that's basically the amount of, as Councilmember Kellogg kind of changed the concept, but the budget amount of the money left over, that's well within that reasonable frame, and then we can look at tackling phase two and see if we can find some budget solutions to that. I think Ms. Abdelgawad mentioned the possibility of some grants on some things like that, so I'm comfortable with that.
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
By only approving phase, I mean, I understand that the number on phase two is hard to swallow, but by only approving for the company to draw the design for phase one, I don't understand how that's helping the situation. Can you help me understand that, Mr. Moorhead? I mean, basically, this resolution is for the company to develop the design concept for this. So developing the design concept for phase one and phase two together, or for just phase one, doesn't really change what our contract or the bill coming up is going to be. And by just drawing the design for phase two along with phase one is not going to definitely guarantee that we're going to do phase two in the future either. I don't understand how taking phase two out of this resolution is going to really change what we need to do tonight.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond.
Yes, please.
As a matter of clarification, maybe I require staff to clarify this. I'm looking at a sheet produced by the contractor here where we're seeing the breakdown of work for phase one and phase two. This is the first breakdown after the conceptual design B picture. And I think some of the people who, on the dais, and I'm not speaking for anyone, but we're looking at this and we're seeing this is where the actual monetary breakdown is of the two phases. This is the document that's creating the sticker shock here. If I'm understanding the question posed to me, then is the resolution merely for the $5,900 design fee, Or is this, are we, again, I guess, as an overall statement, I'm willing to approve anybody doing an engineering study. I'm willing to approve phase 1 for $23,860 estimated cost plus a 20% contingency. What I'm seeing everybody having the problem with is the second half of the page. But if I'm going to approve resolution 15-17, which incorporates this in here, that sends a mixed message. So I'm going to, I think we all then need clarification. Are we approving just the $5,900 fee, or do we run the risk of approving $127,000? Mr.
Krantz?
Fearborn.
Go ahead, Mike.
What I attempted to answer, and I apologize for the confusion, at the work session when this was brought forward, council wanted to know details of what the final design was going to look like. The final design that is being contemplated is shown on conceptual design B of the council packet. That is the center column with the smaller columns around it and the stainless steel feature. So the intent was that the council approve the architectural features and the aesthetics of what the roundabout committee had developed with the architect. Second direction that was given was to phase the improvements so that it met current budget constraints. That is what we are now referring to as phase 1, that is shown on conceptual design A. As you pointed out, that has a estimated construction cost with a contingency of $28,632. There is also a $5,900 design fee associated with that. So the total cost of constructing conceptual design A, which the committee is putting forward as phase 1, is a total cost of $34,000 and some change. It is not the intent of the resolution or the design services agreement to do anything more than approve the aesthetic features of the ultimate roundabout feature that's being brought forward. The estimated budget to complete the feature as shown on concept design B is being brought forward for information purposes only. So the budget amendment and that council is being requested to authorize only provides funding for what is shown as conceptual design A. Also, the motion there is to, because we have a current contract, is to authorize the city manager to execute a contract amendment to provide design services for conceptual design A.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
Okay, in light of the information provided by staff, I'm going to move to withdraw the amendment that I propose. I will state that is stipulated that in light of the information, I'm concerned in approving resolution 15-17 as presented. I would prefer to see these two bifurcated, since this is a document as a whole and that seemingly cannot be done. I'll not be supporting.
And we're back to original motion on 1517. Councilmember Ubach?
We've already been told that $600,000 approximately has been spent, and now I see on here there's going to be $127,000 also with another one. We're getting up to $750,000 on something that is supposed to make us all feel good. It's not going to help us, any of us, get a job. It's not going to help us pay our taxes. It's not going to help us on anything. I realize that we can't live by bread alone. We have to have some beauty in our life. But I think that we need to realize that we're making a mistake here and stop putting money into a rat hole. It's just going to keep on, because then you start talking about the maintenance on this, and first time a semi hits some of that and we have to rebuild all of that, we've got a problem. I just think we ought to cut our losses and leave what we've got right there. It seems to be working fine, and let the rest of it go, and let's spend our money on some improving the streets and doing some other things, maybe getting some more parkland, things that we can all benefit from.
Councilmember Delgado.
First off, I would question how much parkland we can get for $25,000. Second of all, I guess my thought on this is before we decide not to approve this just based on sticker shock, we need to think about what's going to happen when we don't. If we don't approve just starting with something that barely exceeds our current budget, and we shoot this down tonight, then we're going to be left with a circle full of what people last year were asking, is that a plant or are those weeds? Is that what's supposed to be there? Are you guys done? What are you going to put in the roundabout? Are we going to put something that looks like a headstone, the thing that we said we didn't want first? Or are we going to think about putting something grand there that our city, our citizens can be proud of? Personally, when asked to phase it out, I thought this was a great way to start. We're not really, I mean, we are exceeding the budget, but not by a whole lot. I thank Mr. Boehner for what he said, because I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I know people care a lot about the curbs, and the curbs are important in our city, but looking at spending $500,000 on curbs this year, I don't know many people that come into town and they are like, oh, wow, look at those curbs. You know, or driving by from the highway think, oh, look at those curbs over there. I'd like to go see what that is. Those are some of the things we were hoping that this roundabout feature would bring to town, besides just that appeal for people driving by. And again, one of the big things we were really proud of on what would be part of the second phase, which, by the way, when we talked about that, could be a second and a third phase. I mean, it could be a little bit at a time. The pedestals that go around it could come or go at any time. The art that goes on top of it could be something that starts small and grows, and that's kind of where we are with the planter. With the Arts Commission getting started, and as I said before, you know, we've heard that there are grants out there to help bring art into cities, and so that was kind of where we were thinking, and this was beginning with a starting point with phase 1 and then a grand plan for what is presented tonight as phase 2, but doesn't have, I mean, the sticker shock can be scary, but we just spent $500,000 on the curbs and didn't blink. So I guess that's my question. If we decide to vote this down tonight, then we need to think about what is it that we're going to put there, and maybe some advice would be to start from the very, very beginning with a very clear dollar amount, because as this committee began, we knew what the amount was that was left in the budget, but I felt like, and maybe I misinterpreted some of the signals I got from council members, but I felt like we really were given a dream big and we'll get there kind of nod from the rest of the council, especially, again, with our focus on art lately, wanting to get some themes, some history, some character in the city of Raymore, and we thought this was a great place to start.
Councilmember Stevens?
Lost my train of thought.
You lost your train of thought? Okay. Councilmember Kellogg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been waiting to respond for this for about 7 minutes, but I didn't lose my train of thought. It's about the first. Mrs. Shoebox said that, you know, that we could have done this for $200,000. I completely agree. Could have. You know, the stoplight traffic signal in front of Culver's cost about $120,000. You know, it has to be engineered in that, but that's what that signal was expected to cost, was around $200,000 down there. And I fought vehemently against a roundabout to the point where my colleagues just, you know, pulled me aside and said, shut up, you know, just shut up. But I didn't. And I've learned a lot through this roundabout, a lot. And I hear Mr. Stevens sit down there, and, you know, there's one thing that I appreciate is consistency, but when I don't get it, I get frustrated. And when this all started out, you know, I thought Mr. Stevens was there with me on, you know, the roundabout wasn't a good idea. Wasn't that long ago, maybe 12 months ago, that I found out that the one that asked for something other than a traffic signal was Mr. Stevens, you know? And then he tells me tonight that, you know, he agrees with Mrs. Hubach that we could have had a street light for $200,000. My question would be then, why would you vote for the budget to put in, I'm frustrated. Why would you vote for a budget to spend $600,000 and then, I don't know. I'm frustrated.
May I respond to that? Kevin, it was just a suggestion. That was all it was. So you're just totally wrong on that. Sorry.
Okay, there is a motion and a second to approve Resolution 1517. Okay,
Just a point of clarification, I believe you've answered it, but just for the record, we approve this as is. We are in no way obligating construction cost in phase 2 of $127,000. This is simply for the $34,000 and change, correct?
The budget amendment to follow is only for $34,000 and change. So.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Hubach?
Will anything we do improve the traffic there at the roundabout? Whatever we're talking about is just for aesthetics looking. There's not a single thing involved in it that's going to improve the traffic in that area. Then, am I correct? So we've done everything that we can to improve traffic. Now we're wanting to beautify the area. Is that, am I correct in that?
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Please.
And you see, when we had the roundabout there by the park, I'm a member of the Garden Club, and we spent $5,000, and the Park Foundation spent $5,000, and we put up all of the bronze artwork that's out there for $10,000. So when you all start talking about 120 some and different things like that, I think that you need to reconsider, because that architecture there, the features are really nice, and they only cost $10,000.
Mr. Mayor, I'd call the question.
We have to vote on it.
Vote on calling the question. All in favor of calling the question? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the question is called. We have a motion to approve 1517. Motion and a second to approve 1517. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favor. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. Motion passes. We have the first reading of Bill 3054 by title only.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, I believe, didn't we have multiple sections under
That's
Resolution
correct.
1517?
Mr. Krass?
Sorry, thank you. I think the next item that I laid out, and again, I apologize for the confusion, is that the committee would request a motion authorizing the city manager to sign the contract amendment with
3055?
Hair and Hair.
Bill 3055?
It's just a motion, because we already have a contract in place, and then it would be to call for Bill 3055.
Okay. You made a motion to allow the city manager to...
It would be to authorize the city manager to sign the additional design services agreement associated with the action you just took, sir.
Okay, motion to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve for the city manager to sign the contract to approve the design services.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? One in opposition. The motion carries.
Now staff would ask for 3055, sir.
Have a reading of Bill 3055 by title only, please.
First reading of Bill 3055 by title only. Excuse me, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2015 capital budget.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3055, amending the budget.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve Bill 3055. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Bill carries and vote 7-1. Is that all the stuff that's in that? Thank you. Now, may I have a reading of Bill 3054 by title only?
First reading of Bill 3054 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Insituform Technologies USA LLC for sanitary sewer rehabilitation project, city project number 15208-201, in the amount of $115,065, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Staff report.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We are asking award of a contract to Insituform Technologies to reline sewers in the Silver Lake and Lakeshore neighborhoods in the amount of $115,065. Insituform has previously performed work in the city satisfactorily, and we recommend award of the contract.
Questions of staff? I have a question. Is this where they insert a vinyl lining into
This is where they install what we refer to as a sock, and it's epoxy impregnated. So they'll put a sock in the line and then put pressurized hot water through it. That cures the epoxy, and it basically forms a pipe within a pipe.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3054 for sanitation sewer rehabilitation.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3054. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. May we have a reading of Bill 3053 by title only?
First reading of Bill 3053 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Allegiant Technology for the purchase and installation of a voicemail system in the amount of $15,616, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Staff report.
Thank you, sir. I'll make the staff report on this. If there are any technology questions, Mr. Mayberry is lurking behind the glass over here watching. So, the fiscal year 2015 capital budget does include funding to replace the voicemail system here at City Hall. That would be both the software system associated with our current phone system, as well as that particular software system also requires some equipment upgrades. In its memo, staff does summarize the results of the bidding and recommends that the council award a contract to the low proposer on this, Allegiant Technology. That concludes staff report, sir.
Questions of staff? Thank you. Jay?
I have one. I don't think I've been to a city council meeting yet where we haven't asked Mr. Wilder's opinion on something, so I'd just like to know if he has any comment on this.
I think voicemails are wonderful invention. I have no opinion on roundabouts whatsoever.
Thank you.
But
Spoken like a man who just went Google.
But I am a frequent user of our city's voicemail system. I think if it is in trouble now, we certainly need to improve it, and I'm sure the citizens, staff, and council would think it would be a good idea.
Other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3053.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3053, an award of contract for voicemail system replacement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Bill 3053. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. That takes care of new business. Honor the public comments. If there's anybody from the public who'd like to come up, please identify yourself for the record and keep your comments under 5 minutes. Seeing nobody come forward, close the public comment. We'll move on to mayor council communication. Handy, here we are. Beginning with Mr. Moorhead.
It was an honor to extend the proclamation to Mr. Wolfenbarger It was great to see how many family members, friends, and supporters he had, and he picked up even more supporters tonight with all of us and those watching it, and so I was very proud of him, and I wish him well and his organization. Mr. Peters as well. The Veterans Parade was a good event last year, and I'm excited to hear that they're going to try to do that again. And I think it's great that they're shifting and alternating and doing various veterans of each different event needing honored. So this opposing year, World War I, that's fantastic. I would extend to the Parks Department with the flag retirement. I know PAC 32 here in Raymore it does an annual retirement of flags, and it's an incredible, about a 45-minute presentation. The Scouts do it. It honors veterans. It honors Scouts. They talk about the history of flags. I never realized all the history of what goes into retiring a flag in the ceremony. So I will, if the Parks Board will, or not the Parks Board, but the Park staff will extend me the latitude, I'm going to ask that they contact them, and because I know they'd offer to come out too, and they collect flags all year for it, and I know that they might even be willing to help put on a presentation as well. So, thank you.
Mr. Boehner.
Well, I've been uncharacteristically vocal this evening, so I think I'll have no further comment.
Okay. Mr. Kellogg?
I would like to echo what Mr. Moorhead just said there. It is an honor to be in the presence of Mr. Wolfenbarger. He called his family his hero, and we all have our heroes. Well, he is mine. He is mine, and so were the veterans in the back of the audience. And Mr. Peters, thank you, Mr. Peters, for lining up the Veterans Parade. And if you're asking for my permission, you got it. The problem is I need 7 more, but I don't see a problem there. I know he'll have a excellent turnout, and it's nice to see him have and that committee have plans to honor different veterans each year, that in a significant way. Very, very nice, and thank you for that, Mr. Peters. Also, the flag retirement, very good idea. Thank you. And I do have flags, I honestly do, and I'm not going to throw them away. That's like throwing a Bible away. So I appreciate everything you're doing there, and I will get those to you. And I also think a good idea is to involve the Scouts too, because I remember when I was a Scout, I remember being part of that ceremony as a young boy, and that's it taught me reverence of the Old Glory. It really did. So, and we've got great Scouts here in Raymore. So, if we can involve them, I would really appreciate that. Also, lastly, I'd like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Cartwright for being here tonight. You two have been through this roundabout with me for better part of 14 months, and I appreciate all of your input. I appreciate everything you've done for me. You have given me emails of contacts of artists and folks. Their son is a metal fabricator that's done some beautiful work. He used to do some beautiful work in Wichita, I believe. And they gave me a lot of information, and it very invaluable to me. And thank you for the support, and thank you for all of your time and phone calls and taking my phone calls through that. So thanks a lot.
Mr. Burke?
I was going to say I have no comment, but I remembered I have a grommet from a retired flag on my key ring that PAC 32 gave to me when in recognition of leadership service. But probably in 2014 we did not do any retirement with PAC 32. Troop 32 does, so that would probably be the more appropriate contact with Dan Barnes. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to kind of bring this up since Kevin brought it up. When we were talking about the roundabout, I suggested initially that a roundabout be considered alongside a traffic light for that intersection. And I would like to ask why you feel like you have to attack me personally to make a point.
Councilmember Holman?
Thank you, sir. I'd like to echo the comments of pretty much everybody else that spoke. It was great to see Mr. Wolfenbarger and Mr. Peters here. We also had some members, I think Councilmember Kellogg referred to them as veterans. By the hats, they were either VFW or American Legion. I'm not sure which, but both fine organizations. Good to have them here tonight. And another group that we don't recognize very often, but we had, in addition to both Mr. Rulo and Mr. McLean, who are still here, we had Chairman Harris from the Parks Board. It's really good to see more engagement and them being at our meetings. We had several items that we voted on tonight that were in relationship to the Parks Board, and the relationship between them and us has to be good for us to be able to move forward with amenities for our citizens. And I applaud and appreciate the work that staff has done, Mr. Crass in particular, your group with the farmers market, and I like us bringing our city resources in as much as possible to work on those projects. So well done. Thank you.
Councilmember Abdel Gawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take a minute to thank Mr. Crass for all of your work working with the Roundabout Feature Committee. We worked for many months and took a lot of your time, and I just wanted to let you know we appreciate your work, we appreciate your advice and input, and thanks for that. And I want to thank the council for your reluctant support of that tonight.
Councilmember Hubach.
Nothing tonight.
Okay. And we really don't have anything this evening. And we don't have reason to go into executive session, right?
No reason to go into executive sessions.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? We're in adjournment. Thank you.